Well, I thought that argument, and first of all, I'm Richard RJ Eskow with the 0 Hour. I should always start with that. I thought that conversation with Jaron Lanier about his argument that we should all eliminate our social media accounts was really, really interesting. But I want to touch on a theme that I'll probably hit on later in this show as well, and that's the fact that the people who are designing these systems that ensnare us, the billionaires who are basically guiding our social lives and a lot of the way we view the world, they may not be the best folks to be deciding how we spend our time, much less which addictions should consume us or which news we should consume. I just worry about these guys being in charge, and I worry about the culture that still, even now, continues to glorify some of them. Now, I wouldn't expect Jaron Lanier necessarily to agree with me because he works with a lot of these folks, he's friends with a lot of these folks, but I think the culture that idealizes Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk is really kind of sick. And I think we tend to idealize them because they're wealthy, because they're powerful, without thinking about the fact that it's us that made them wealthy and powerful. First of all, because we created the internet. They didn't. The American people did. It was publicly funded. We created the microchip. We created all the things that have made them rich. And also because these guys, these billionaires, they're basically, it's a Darwinian system, capitalism, and they've been selected based on some pretty sick traits that really aren't necessarily the kinds of things you want in someone that's influencing how you spend your time. Case in point, I saw this article from Business Insider. Now, for those of you who don't know, Business Insider is what it seems to be. It's by the name. It's a publication that talks about the business world. And it does a lot of great reporting, and there's some really good writing and really good work done at the publication. I don't mean to trash it altogether. It was founded by a guy named Henry Blodgett, who got into a little trouble on the investment side in Wall Street, then went into this, publicizing and writing, and has done a really good job of it. So I'm not going to trash Henry Blodgett per se, but on the other hand, Business Insider does tend, while it does a lot of good reporting, does tend to glorify these guys and their culture. And the case in point, this is a classic one, it goes back to 2010, but particularly with what we've learned since then, it hasn't aged all that well, and it's by Henry Blodgett. The headline, and normally I always say writers don't write their own headlines, but he's the editor, so he probably wrote this one. This is the headline in total, it's kind of long. Okay, comma, but you gotta admit, dash, the way Mark Zuckerberg hacked into those email accounts was pretty cool. Now, what it turns out, he's talking about the fact that, and they broke the story, I believe, that as a sophomore at Harvard, Mark Zuckerberg, now the founder and CEO of Facebook, used login information from the people who belong to Facebook to break into their private email accounts and read their emails. Now, that's not a good thing. Even Henry Blodgett is acknowledging that's not a good thing, but he's saying, well, it was pretty cool. Henry Blodgett writes, a lot of people were appalled by this. Some said it was indicative of a flawed moral character. You think? That's me adding. Some said it might rise to the level of a felony. Others yawned and said, whatever, Mark was a college sophomore. What Henry Blodgett's point is, I think it's really sick and twisted, and yes, I think it matters what he did as a college sophomore, because that laid the groundwork for his billions and his control and influence today. He broke into the private email accounts of 2 Harvard Crimson editors by scanning Facebook for members who described themselves as being part of the Harvard Crimson, which is the school newspaper. He then checked into a Facebook system log for failed login attempts, figuring that so the reason they might have failed to log in or logged in unsuccessfully was because they used the wrong password, a password to another account. He then tried it on their email accounts at the Harvard Crimson. That succeeded. And he read a bunch of their emails to find out what they were going to say about him and about the controversy that he stole the Facebook idea. Now, what this says to me is that this is exactly the kind of thing that makes you a billionaire in today's society. It's exactly the kind of thing that gets kind of sort of idealized by journalists like Henry Blodgett and others who may not be even as honest and transparent as Henry Blodgett's being about his bias. And you know what? It's sick, it's twisted, it verges on the sociopathic. It certainly puts you on a spectrum of morality that does not include most human beings. Now, it will give you a head start at becoming a billionaire, but it's exactly the reason why billionaires should not be running our society, much less our very consciousness, which is what social media are doing. Now, Mark Zuckerberg may be a great guy to his friends. He may be all sorts of wonderful things. I have no idea. Frankly, I don't even care. What I do know is that I do not want people like this to be hacking my attention span or my focus. So the more I think about Jaron's idea of deleting my social media accounts, the more I think it might be a good idea. I'm going to think about it more and probably be tweeting about it later tonight. So that's at RJ Eskow if you want to know what I'm thinking lately. And I'm still on social media. I'll be back.